The chamber was filled with fear. The alien council sat around a long black table, their eyes shining in the dim light. The walls shook from distant explosions. Outside, their planet burned. Ships of fire cut through the skies, and the enemy fleet grew closer with every hour. The council leader, a tall figure with silver skin, raised his trembling hands. "We cannot hold them," he said. His voice was heavy with despair. "Our defenses are broken. Our fleets are gone. If we do nothing, our world will fall within the next day." The others looked at him in silence. They knew he was right. Their proud armies had been crushed in just 3 battles. The enemy, an old and merciless species, had returned. For centuries, the council had prayed that they would never rise again. But prayers had not stopped them. The enemy had come, hungrier and stronger than before. One of the counselors whispered, "There is still the beacon." At first no one spoke. The word itself carried weight, like a memory of the past. The beacon was ancient, built by hands older than their history. It was said to call upon allies of great power, allies who once stood beside them in forgotten wars. But the beacon had been silent for ages. Some believed it no longer worked. Others believed it would never answer again. The leader turned his gaze toward the chamber's center. There, hidden beneath glass and steel, lay the beacon. A great sphere of metal, covered in runes no one could read. Its surface glowed faintly, like embers waiting for breath. "If we use it," the leader said slowly, "we put our fate in the hands of ghosts." Another counselor, younger and desperate, slammed his fist on the table. "Ghosts or not, we have no choice. The enemy will wipe us from the stars. If the beacon can summon even a fraction of the old power, we must try." Around the table, heads nodded. Fear made them agree. Hope, even fragile hope, was better than nothing. The leader closed his eyes, then gave a single nod. "Activate it." Soldiers rushed into the chamber. They entered the chamber beneath the beacon and touched the controls. Lights flickered. The sphere began to hum, a low sound that grew louder until it shook the air. The runes across its surface glowed bright, filling the room with pale light. A beam of energy shot into the sky, piercing the clouds, reaching beyond the stars. The council watched in silence. They waited. Seconds passed. Then minutes. Nothing happened. No fleet appeared. No saviors arrived. The younger counselor's voice trembled. Did it fail? The leader lowered his head. Perhaps the beacon was dead. Perhaps their ancestors had lied. Perhaps no one was coming. But far away, across the void of space, the signal traveled. It passed suns and broken worlds. It crossed dark regions where no ship dared to go. At last, the signal reached a small blue planet, circling a yellow star. The planet called Earth. Humanity heard the call. In the command center of Earth's orbital defense, alarms rang. Officers ran across the floor, pulling up maps and data streams. At the heart of the room stood Admiral Kian, a man with sharp eyes and a steady voice. "Report," he said. A young officer saluted. "Sir, we've received a beacon transmission. Origin unknown. It is old, very old. But it is calling for help." The Admiral frowned. "From where?" "Outer Rim, Sector 49 Alpha. A system not on our maps. Alien design, sir." The room grew quiet. Earth had made contact with other species before, but never had they received such a signal. The Admiral studied the data. The beacon's energy signature was powerful, desperate, like a cry through time itself. He knew what it meant. Somewhere out there, someone was dying. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "Full battle group. We are answering this call." The officer hesitated. "Sir, it may not be meant for us." The Admiral's eyes hardened. "It doesn't matter. Someone asked for help, and humanity will answer." Across Earth's orbit, ships stirred. Massive carriers, sleek destroyers, and fast frigates powered up their engines. Crews rushed aboard. Pilots ran to their fighters. The fleet awakened like a sleeping giant. The beacon's cry had reached them, and they would not ignore it. Back on the alien world, hope had begun to fade. The beacon still shone, but the skies outside were filled with fire. Enemy ships descended through the clouds. Cities crumbled beneath their weapons. The council leader watched the destruction from the chamber window. His heart was heavy. "No one is coming," he whispered. But then, the stars rippled. Space itself seemed to tear open. A fleet appeared, sharp and bright, with engines burning blue. Hundreds of human ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. They formed a wall of steel and light above the alien world. The council gasped. These were not the saviors they had imagined. These were not the gods of legend. These were humans. Fragile-looking creatures. Soft-skinned, small-eyed, with short lives. How could they stand against the enemy? The younger counselor whispered in horror, "We are doomed." In the human flagship, Admiral Kian stood before the viewscreen. He looked down at the burning world below, then at the massive enemy fleet in orbit. He clenched his fists. "This wasn't meant for us," he said softly. "But we are here. And we are going to fight." Outside, human ships turned toward the enemy. Weapons locked. Shields activated. Engines roared. The first shots of battle were about to begin. The council leader's eyes widened. For the first time, he felt something strange. Not despair. Not fear. But something almost forgotten. Hope. The alien council chamber shook as the first human ships appeared above their world. Hundreds of vessels formed a line against the burning skies. Their engines glowed blue, their hulls sharp and unfamiliar. The counselors stared in silence. These were not the great saviors their legends had promised. These were not ancient warriors of myth. These were humans. To the aliens, they looked fragile, small, and weak. Their ships seemed smaller than the enemy's massive cruisers. Their designs were strange and new, unlike the ancient armadas of power they once remembered. Fear returned to the council. The younger counselor whispered, "They are too late. They cannot stand against the storm." The council leader said nothing. He only watched as the human fleet moved into formation, calm and steady, like a wall preparing to hold. On the human flagship, Admiral Kian stood before his officers. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp with focus. "Status," he commanded. "All ships in position, Admiral," an officer replied. "Weapons hot. Shields online. Enemy numbers are larger than expected." Kian nodded. "Send a message to the aliens below. Let them know who has come." The officer hesitated. "Sir, they may not understand our language." Kian allowed a faint smile. "Then they will understand our presence." A transmission beam shot toward the alien council chamber. The image of Admiral Kian appeared above their table. His uniform was simple, his expression firm. His voice echoed through the chamber. "This is Admiral Kian of the human fleet. We received your signal. We know your world is under attack. We stand ready to help." The aliens gasped. The humans spoke with such confidence, as if they had no fear of the overwhelming enemy above. The leader leaned forward. His voice trembled. You are not the ones we called. The beacon was not meant for you." Kian's expression hardened. "That may be true. But we are here. And we will not stand by while a world is burned." For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The aliens stared at one another. These humans were bold, perhaps too bold. Did they not see the enemy fleet that outnumbered them 10-1? Did they not realize the hopelessness of the fight? The younger counselor shouted, "You cannot win. Even our strongest fleets fell before them. You will only die with us." Kian's image did not flinch. "Perhaps. But humanity has never turned away from those in need. If death waits for us, then we will meet it standing." His words carried across the chamber, and for the first time, the aliens felt something strange. These humans were not like other species they had known. They spoke not of surrender, not of despair, but of defiance. Outside, the enemy fleet moved closer. Their warships were enormous, their weapons glowing like suns. The aliens felt the floor shake as enemy bombardments struck the planet's surface again. Kian turned to his officers. "Ready the forward squadrons. Hold formation. Let the enemy make the first move." Human destroyers spread out, their hulls gleaming in the light of the burning planet. Fighters launched from carriers, wings of steel birds flying in tight formation. The alien council leader whispered as he watched the screens, "They are so few. They cannot survive." Another counselor leaned closer to the glass, his voice hushed. "Yet, they move without fear." The first enemy ship fired. A beam of red energy cut across the sky. A human cruiser tilted, its shields flaring, but it held the line. Instantly, the human fleet returned fire. Dozens of beams and missiles shot forward, striking the enemy ship's hull. The vessel shook, then broke apart in a flash of fire. The alien council gasped. Never before had they seen the enemy fall so quickly. The younger counselor whispered, "Impossible, they destroyed it in one strike." Kian's voice came again through the transmission. "Stand behind us. Watch closely. Humanity does not run." The enemy fleet roared forward, hundreds of ships burning like fire across the sky. The humans adjusted formation with calm precision. Orders flew across the human fleet: hold the flanks, cover the carriers, aim for weak points. Alien eyes widened as they saw how humans fought. Every move was sharp, disciplined, like pieces of a great machine. The enemy tried to crush them with numbers, but the humans danced through the fire. A single human destroyer broke formation, diving straight into a cluster of enemy ships. Its guns blazed, tearing holes into the enemy hulls. It twisted between beams of light, striking again and again, until 3 enemy vessels broke apart. The destroyer limped back, smoke trailing, but it was not destroyed. The council leader felt his chest tighten. He had never seen such courage. He whispered, "They fight, like they have done this many times before." Another counselor nodded. "They fight as if every battle is their last." The enemy grew angry. Their larger cruisers advanced, firing storm after storm. Human ships were battered, shields flickering, but they held the line. A carrier launched another wave of fighters, tiny ships swarming like wasps around the giants. They struck engines, cut through weak points, and vanished before the enemy could catch them. The aliens could not believe their eyes. These humans, so fragile in appearance, fought with strength that shook the stars. The younger counselor, who once shouted in despair, now stared in silence. His voice was small. Maybe they can win." But the leader shook his head. "Do not hope too soon. The enemy is not yet broken. They will return with greater force." On the flagship, Admiral Kian stood tall, his hands behind his back. His voice was calm as he gave new orders. "Hold steady. Do not waste ammunition. Make every strike count." He turned his gaze toward the alien world below. His voice softened, though no one heard but himself. "We are not the saviors you asked for. But we will be the shield you need." Outside, the battle raged on. The first clash had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn who humanity truly was. The alien skies burned as the enemy fleet drew closer. Their warships blotted out the stars, shadows spreading across the world below. Each ship was massive, built for terror, with weapons that had crushed entire civilizations. The alien council watched from their chamber in silence, fear filling their hearts. They had seen this before. Entire sectors of their empire had been destroyed by this same enemy. Their fleets had been scattered, their colonies erased, and their armies left broken. No one had ever stopped them. Until now, no one had even slowed them. Yet in orbit above their planet, a fragile wall of human ships stood against the storm. The humans looked so small compared to the enemy. Their vessels were thinner, their engines weaker, their hulls smaller. To alien eyes, it seemed hopeless. One enemy dreadnought alone was bigger than 3 human cruisers combined. The younger counselor trembled as he looked at the screens. "It is useless," he whispered. "They cannot stand against that. The humans will be crushed in moments." The council leader did not answer. His silver eyes studied the human formation. Something about the humans was different. They did not move with panic. They did not scatter or retreat. Every ship held its place, waiting with discipline, calm as the void itself. On the human flagship, Admiral Kian stood with his officers, watching as the enemy fleet spread into attack lines. Red markers filled the tactical map, surrounding them with overwhelming numbers. An officer's voice shook as he spoke. "Admiral, they outnumber us 20 to 1. They have capital ships larger than our entire fleet. What are your orders?" Kian's eyes narrowed. "Hold the line. Position the carriers behind the destroyers. Cruisers on the wings. No one fires until my command." The officer hesitated. "Sir, if they charge us all at once, we will not survive." Kian's voice was quiet but firm. "Then we will not let them charge all at once. We will break them piece by piece." Outside, the enemy fleet moved forward. Their ships were like mountains drifting through the void, covered in weapons glowing with red energy. They moved with the confidence of conquerors, certain of their victory. They had broken countless species before, and to them the humans were nothing more than another small obstacle to crush. But the humans did not back down. Kian's voice carried across the fleet. "All ships, steady your aim. Watch for openings. Trust your brothers and sisters beside you. Today, humanity shows the galaxy what it means to fight." The message went silent, but its echo spread through every crew. On each ship, men and women gripped their stations. Their hearts pounded, but their eyes burned with resolve. They had trained for battles like this. They had lived through wars before. They would not break now. The alien council watched with disbelief. Their own fleets, when faced with the enemy, had scattered like frightened animals. Yet these humans stood like stone. One counselor whispered, "They do not fear them." The leader's eyes narrowed. "No," he said softly. "They do not fear death." The first wave of enemy ships broke formation. Dozens of heavy cruisers charged forward, weapons igniting. The void lit up with red fire. Energy beams ripped across the sky, striking against human shields. A human destroyer shook violently, its armor glowing hot, but it stayed in place. Instantly, the humans answered. Blue lances of energy shot forward, missiles streaked through the dark, and torpedoes burned like falling stars. The first enemy cruiser exploded in flames, its debris scattering across space. Another followed, then another. The alien council gasped. They had never seen anyone destroy enemy ships so quickly. The younger counselor whispered, How can they do this?" The leader leaned forward, his voice heavy with awe. "Because they do not fight as we did. They fight with unity. Every ship is part of a greater whole." On the battlefield, the enemy commander grew enraged. His massive flagship loomed behind the front lines, red eyes glowing across its hull. His voice roared across enemy channels. "Crush them! They are insects. Tear their line apart." More enemy ships advanced, larger and deadlier, firing storm after storm. Human shields flickered. A frigate exploded, torn apart in fire, its crew gone in an instant. But even as the humans lost ships, their line did not break. Every death was answered by another strike. A human cruiser fired a perfect volley into the engines of an enemy vessel, causing it to spin out of control and crash into its ally. The aliens below watched in silence. To them, it seemed impossible. For every human ship that fell, 2 enemy ships followed. Yet the humans did not celebrate. They fought with grim determination, as if they knew the battle had only just begun. On the flagship, an officer turned to Kian. "Admiral, the enemy is regrouping. They're sending in their dreadnoughts. Kian's face remained calm. Good. Let them come. The enemy dreadnoughts moved forward, vast ships with armor thicker than cities, each carrying enough firepower to burn a planet. Their presence filled the stars with dread. The alien council leader whispered, "This is the end. Nothing can stand against dreadnoughts." But Kian's voice echoed through the fleet once more. "Remember who we are. Remember why we fight. Not for conquest. Not for glory. We fight so others may live. And no matter their size, no enemy is invincible." His words carried strength. Human ships shifted formation again, spreading wider, pulling the dreadnoughts into the center. Fighters swarmed like shadows, striking weak points with deadly precision. A destroyer sacrificed itself, diving straight into the path of a dreadnought's superweapon. The blast consumed it, but the sacrifice saved the carriers behind it. The alien council gasped in horror, but also in awe. They had never seen such acts before. These humans, who had come uninvited, were dying for a world that was not theirs. The younger counselor's voice shook. "Why? Why would they do this for us?" The leader closed his eyes. "Because they are not like us. They do not fight for themselves alone." Outside, the battle raged on. The enemy dreadnoughts roared with fury, but humanity did not bend. Every strike, every sacrifice, every maneuver told a story. A story the galaxy had never heard before. The story of humanity's defiance. The void shook with fire as the enemy dreadnoughts pressed forward. Their weapons burned like suns, tearing through the darkness with endless fury. Each blast was powerful enough to shatter a city, and the alien council watching from their chamber trembled with fear. They had seen these dreadnoughts before. Their people had fallen to them centuries ago. No weapon they once had could break through their armor. No fleet they once commanded had survived against them. To the council, this was the end. But the humans did not break. The human fleet shifted again, moving like a single living creature. Cruisers slid to the flanks, destroyers darted in tight groups, carriers held steady as fighters poured out like a swarm of steel hornets. The enemy fired, and a human cruiser shuddered, half its hull burning, but its guns still roared back in reply. Admiral Kian stood tall on the flagship's bridge, his voice calm as his officers shouted reports. "Shields down on the Valiant, Admiral. The ironclad requests permission to ram, sir." Kian raised his hand. His eyes studied the tactical display, where red markers of the enemy glowed like fire against the cold stars. He spoke with sharp authority. "Negative. No ramming yet. Hold positions. Let the dreadnoughts commit." His officers obeyed without hesitation. They trusted him. They trusted their training. And they trusted humanity's will to survive. The enemy dreadnoughts moved deeper into the human formation, confident they would crush everything in their path. Their massive hulls glowed with red light, their cannons ready to fire again. That was when Kian gave the order. "All squadrons, now. Strike their eyes." At once, wings of human fighters surged forward. Tiny ships compared to the giants, they flew with deadly precision. They streaked across the dreadnought's armor, diving into narrow weak points, aiming at sensor arrays, communication towers, and exposed weapon turrets. Explosions rippled across the giant hulls. Enemy fire turned wildly into the void as their vision faltered. The alien council gasped as they watched the impossible. The mighty dreadnoughts, gods of war, were blinded by swarms of small, fragile human craft. They cripple them with insects," one counselor whispered. "No," the leader corrected softly. "With courage." The enemy roared with fury. More ships surged forward to protect their dreadnoughts. Heavy cruisers and battleships poured fire into the swarm of human fighters, tearing many apart. But every pilot fought until the last breath. One fighter, burning and broken, crashed directly into an enemy turret, exploding with such force that the turret itself was torn from the dreadnought side. On the flagship, Kian saw the opening. "All destroyers, target the wounded one. Aim for its engines. Fire at will." Human destroyers turned sharply, engines glowing bright as they accelerated. Their cannons thundered, missiles streaked forward, torpedoes locked onto targets. The first dreadnought shook violently. Its engines erupted in flame, one by one. The giant turned slowly, spinning out of control, drifting helplessly. The alien council erupted in shock. One of the great monsters was crippled. Never in living memory had they seen such a thing. "They are breaking them," whispered the younger counselor, his voice filled with awe. "They are breaking the unstoppable." But the humans were not finished. Kian's voice cut across the fleet again. "Second wave, strike the flanks. Do not let them regroup. Press the advantage." Cruisers fired coordinated volleys into the exposed sides of enemy ships. Frigates darted in and out, harassing larger vessels, forcing them to waste fire. Another dreadnought took heavy damage, its armor peeling away as explosions rippled along its spine. Still, the cost was high. Human ships burned. A destroyer broke apart under the weight of enemy fire, its crew lost in a burst of light. A carrier's hangar was torn open, spilling fighters and debris into the void. The council leader closed his eyes. He could feel their sacrifice. These humans fought not like conquerors, but like guardians, willing to give everything to shield others. Kian's voice was steady, though sorrow lined his heart. "We honor them by holding the line. No retreat. Every second we fight is a second the enemy does not win." The humans pressed harder. Torpedo volleys cut deep into enemy cruisers. Fighters sacrificed themselves to create openings for capital ships. A damaged frigate turned itself into a weapon, charging straight into an enemy battleship and detonating its reactor on impact. The explosion lit the void with fire, and both ships vanished in the blaze. The alien council could not look away. They had once thought humans weak, soft creatures with fragile lives. Now they saw something else. They saw warriors who did not fear the impossible. They saw protectors who fought for a world that was not their own. They saw a force that might change the fate of the galaxy. The younger counselor whispered, "How can they do this? How can such a small species fight like this?" The leader answered, his voice low but certain, "Because they do not fight for themselves. They fight for each other. And now, they fight for us." On the battlefield, the first dreadnought finally collapsed. Fire tore through its hull, and it split apart, breaking into two massive fragments that drifted into the void. Human ships cheered across the comms, but Admiral Kian's voice cut through the celebration. "Do not celebrate yet. There are more. Form the shield wall. Prepare for counterattack." As if on cue, the enemy flagship stirred. Larger than all the rest, its weapons glowed brighter, its engines roared louder. It moved forward slowly, like a mountain coming to life. Every alien in the council chamber froze. This was the true monster. This was the ship that had destroyed entire fleets by itself. The younger counselor's voice shook with terror. "We cannot survive that." But Kian, watching from his command chair, only tightened his fists. "Then we will show it the strength of humanity's strike." His voice echoed across the fleet. "All ships, focus fire. This is not the end. This is the beginning. Today, humanity proves we will not kneel." Outside, the human fleet turned as one, weapons burning, engines roaring. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath as humanity prepared its first true strike against the darkness. The battlefield burned with fire and smoke as human and enemy ships clashed again and again. Wreckage floated across the void, broken hulls glowing like dying stars. The alien council sat frozen in their chamber, their eyes locked on the screens. They had seen the impossible already, a human fleet crippling an enemy dreadnought. But the battle was far from over. The enemy flagship now loomed at the center of the fight, larger than anything the humans had yet faced. Its weapons were so powerful that even a single blast could annihilate an entire cruiser. When it fired, the sky lit up with red fire. A human destroyer vanished instantly, torn to pieces. The council leader whispered, "That is the true face of our enemy. That ship alone has ended empires. The younger counselor gripped the edge of the table, his hands shaking. The humans cannot stand against it. No species can. Yet above their world, humanity stood. Admiral Kian watched from the bridge of his flagship, his face calm though the weight of every loss pressed heavily on his shoulders. His officers shouted reports, their voices frantic. "Admiral, we've lost the frigate Sentinel. The carrier Horizon is venting atmosphere. Enemy cruiser moving to flank our left side." Kian raised his hand for silence. His voice was low but firm, cutting through the chaos like steel. "Hold the line. All ships focus fire on the enemy's escorts. We break them first before we face the flagship." Across the fleet, his order echoed. Human ships moved with precision, shifting into a defensive wall. Cruisers poured concentrated fire into enemy support vessels. Fighters darted through the chaos, swarming around larger ships and striking weak points. A battleship exploded in a storm of light, and 2 enemy cruisers fell soon after. The alien council gasped. To see the enemy lose so many in one engagement was unheard of. But for every enemy ship destroyed, another wave came forward. The humans fought bravely, but the numbers were overwhelming. A human destroyer, already damaged, turned its course directly toward an enemy cruiser. Its captain spoke his final words over comms, "For Earth. For those who cannot fight. Hold the line." The destroyer rammed into the cruiser, detonating its reactor. The explosion tore both ships apart. On the alien world, the council leader bowed his head. He understood. The humans were giving their lives not for conquest, not for wealth, but for survival and protection. Admiral Kian's jaw tightened. Every sacrifice cut into him, but he could not falter. His voice remained steady. "All ships, honor their sacrifice. Do not let it be in vain. Press forward." The humans pushed harder, and the tide began to turn. Enemy formations faltered as their support vessels were destroyed. The humans struck at weak points again and again, never wasting a shot, never hesitating to sacrifice when needed. Yet the enemy flagship remained untouched, watching with cruel patience. Then it moved. The massive ship advanced slowly, its weapons glowing brighter than before. When it fired, its beam tore through the void and struck a human cruiser. The cruiser screamed with light before shattering into debris. Another shot followed, and another human ship was lost. Fear returned to the council chamber. The younger counselor shouted, "It is hopeless. The humans will all die." But the leader shook his head, his voice low and heavy. "No, they are not broken yet. Look at them. They still fight." And it was true. Even as ships were lost, the human fleet held steady. Admiral Kian stood tall, his eyes locked on the enemy flagship. He spoke with iron in his voice. "We cannot match it with strength alone. We must outthink it. All wings, prepare for decoy maneuvers. Draw its fire away from the carriers." Human fighters surged forward again, weaving through deadly blasts. They drew the flagship's attention, luring its weapons away. The massive ship turned slowly, firing at the swarms of small ships. But while its eyes followed the fighters, the human cruisers struck from the side, firing into its armor again and again. Sparks lit across the giant hull, and sections of its shields flickered. On the alien world, the counselors leaned closer to the screens, their hearts racing. "They are hurting it," one whispered. "They are making the unbreakable bleed." The flagship roared in anger, its massive cannons charging for another devastating strike. Kian's eyes narrowed. He knew what was coming. Brace for impact. The flagship's main cannon fired. The blast struck the human destroyer defender. The ship screamed as its hull broke apart. But before it died, it managed to fire one last volley of torpedoes. The torpedoes struck true, slamming into the flagship's exposed armor. Explosions ripped through the giant vessel's side. Cheers erupted across the human fleet. The impossible had happened, the enemy flagship had been wounded. Kian's voice cut through the noise. Do not let up. They bleed like us. Keep striking. Human ships poured everything they had into the opening. Missiles, torpedoes, beams of light filled the void. The flagship's shield strained, cracking under the relentless storm. Yet still, it did not fall. The alien council leader whispered, "The humans have turned the tide. They make the enemy bleed. But can they finish it?" Kian stood tall, knowing the battle was not yet won. His officers looked to him, waiting for the next command. He spoke quietly, but with strength that filled the bridge. "This war is not about numbers. It is about will. And our will is stronger than theirs. We fight to the last breath." Outside, the battle raged on. The humans had struck the first true wound against the enemy's greatest weapon. The tide was turning, but the cost was rising with every second. The galaxy watched in silence, as one truth became clear: humanity would not yield. The battlefield was still burning when a rare silence fell across the void. Wreckage drifted like broken bones between the stars. Both fleets had taken terrible losses, but humanity still held the line. The alien council sat in their chamber, their faces pale. They had watched with disbelief as fragile humans crippled ships that once seemed untouchable. Yet fear still gnawed at them. The enemy flagship remained alive, its wounds deep but not fatal. The younger counselor finally broke the silence. "Why?" he whispered. "Why do they fight like this? Why do they die for us, strangers they never knew?" The leader looked at the human fleet and saw a mystery he could not yet answer. On the human flagship, Admiral Kian stood over the tactical display. His officers reported losses: 3 carriers gone, half the destroyers destroyed, countless fighters lost. Yet their morale remained unbroken. Kian gave calm orders, his voice steady as stone. "Rotate the wounded ships to the rear. Resupply fighters. We cannot let them see weakness." An officer hesitated before speaking. "Admiral, the enemy outnumbers us still. Reinforcements may come. If we stay, we may all fall." Kian looked at him with sharp eyes. "We stay. We do not abandon those who called for help." His words spread across the comms, heard by crews fighting exhaustion and fear. The aliens, watching through the transmission, were stunned. Their own fleets had once fled from the same enemy. Yet these humans, against all logic, refused to retreat. The council leader opened the channel. His voice was heavy with both shame and curiosity. "Human commander, why do you fight this way? Your fleet bleeds for a world that is not your own. You gain nothing here but death. Why?" Kian turned toward the hollow projection, his face lit by the glow of burning stars. He did not hesitate. "Because no one should face extinction alone. We have seen it ourselves. Humanity once stood on the edge of destruction. We swore then that if another called for help, we would answer." The chamber grew silent. The counselors stared in shock. You faced extinction?" Kian nodded slowly. "Long ago, our home was threatened. Not by your enemy, but by another. A war that nearly ended us. Billions died. Cities were ash and oceans were fire. But we survived. We survived because we stood together. And from that day forward, we chose to fight for more than just ourselves." The younger counselor leaned forward, his voice trembling. "And you would do this for us? A species you have never met?" Kian's eyes hardened. "Yes. Because survival means nothing if you stand alone in the dark. We are stronger when we fight together." The words struck the council like lightning. They had lived in fear for so long, believing no one could stand against the enemy. Yet here were humans, scarred by their own past, turning their pain into strength for others. The leader lowered his head. "Perhaps you are the true allies the beacon was meant to call." On the battlefield, the enemy flagship stirred again. Its massive cannons glowed, preparing for another devastating strike. Kian's voice snapped across the fleet. "All ships, brace. Divert power to shields." The flagship fired, and a human cruiser shattered in an instant. Another beam struck, crippling a destroyer. Yet the humans did not scatter. They reformed their line, closing ranks around the wounded, shielding each other with steel and sacrifice. The alien council leader whispered in awe, "They fight as one body, as if every ship is a part of the same soul." But the humans were paying dearly. Losses climbed, and exhaustion spread. Kian clenched his fists, knowing the battle could not last forever. Then his second officer spoke softly. "Sir, if we fall here, Earth itself may be left undefended." Kian's jaw tightened. He remembered Earth, the blue planet, the families waiting, the children who would one day inherit the stars. Yet he did not waver. "If Earth falls because we stood to protect another, then it will fall with honor." The officer bowed his head, accepting the answer. In the council chamber, silence turned into something else, respect. For the first time, the aliens looked at humans not with doubt but with reverence. They understood now that these strange creatures fought with a strength deeper than weapons or numbers. They fought with memory. They fought with a promise. The younger counselor whispered, "Their secret is not their ships. It is their spirit." The leader nodded. "Yes. They carry the fire of survival. A fire that spreads to all who see it." As if to prove those words true, the human fleet struck again. Coordinated volleys rained down on the enemy escorts, cutting them apart with precision. Fighters launched daring runs, slipping through gaps and tearing out weapon batteries. A human frigate, burning from nose to stern, fired its last torpedoes before exploding. Its sacrifice opened a hole in the enemy's formation, and human cruisers poured fire through it. The flagship trembled under the assault, its shields flickering, its armor cracking. The alien council gasped. The unbreakable was breaking. The leader's voice was filled with wonder. "They are teaching us something we forgot long ago, that hope can live even in the face of death." Yet Admiral Kian knew the battle was not finished. His fleet was battered, his people exhausted. He spoke quietly to himself as he stared at the enemy flagship. "We are only human. But that is enough." His words, carried through the silence of space, seemed to become a promise not only to his people, but to the galaxy itself. Humanity's secret was revealed. They were not the strongest, not the oldest, not the most powerful. But they were the ones who refused to surrender. And that refusal made them unstoppable. The enemy flagship loomed like a wounded beast, smoke and fire spilling from its broken armor. Yet even in its pain, it remained deadly. Its cannons glowed with power, and every shot threatened to shatter the fragile balance of the fight. The human fleet, battered and scarred, held formation around Admiral Kian's flagship. They had lost many ships, but their spirits had not broken. Every crew knew this was the moment everything would be decided. On the alien world, the council watched in silence. The younger counselor gripped the table so tightly his claws shook. "This is madness. The humans cannot finish it. The beast is too strong." But the leader's eyes were fixed on the human admiral, his voice low with awe. "Watch them. They do not fear the end. That is their strength." On the bridge of his ship, Kian studied the tactical display. The flagship's shields flickered, weakened but not gone. His officers reported the grim truth. "Admiral, we are running low on torpedoes. Fighter squadrons are down to half strength. Casualties are severe." Kian closed his eyes for a heartbeat. He felt the weight of every soul lost under his command. Yet when he opened his eyes, they burned with unshakable resolve. "Then we use what remains. Every shot, every ship, every life. This is the moment we strike." Across the fleet, his voice rang out. "This enemy has taken countless worlds. But not today. Today we make our stand. Today we remind them what humanity means." Cheers broke through the comms, tired voices filled with sudden fire. Even the alien council felt a spark in their hearts as they heard his words. The humans prepared for their final push. Fighters launched in swarms, their engines burning bright as they streaked across the battlefield. Cruisers shifted into formation, their weapons charging. Destroyers and frigates moved like shields, protecting the vulnerable carriers behind them. The enemy flagship responded with fury. Its massive cannons fired beams of red energy that lit the darkness. A human cruiser was torn apart, then another. Fighters vanished in waves as enemy turrets cut them down. Still they pressed on. The humans darted closer, weaving through deadly fire. Torpedoes slammed into the flagship's hull, tearing deeper wounds. Explosions rippled across its armor. The alien council gasped. "They are cutting into it," one whispered. "They are breaking the monster." But the flagship was far from finished. With a roar of engines, it unleashed a barrage of missiles. Dozens of human ships scrambled to evade, but many could not. The destroyer Valor was struck head-on, erupting into a storm of flame. The carrier Aegis was crippled, its hangars torn open, spilling wreckage into space. On Kian's bridge, alarms screamed. His second officer shouted, "We cannot take another volley like that." Kian stood tall, his voice steady. "Then we end it before they can fire again." He gave the order that would decide the battle. "All remaining ships, converge. Focus everything on that flagship. Fighters, target its weapon batteries. Cruisers, aim for its reactor lines. This is our final strike." The fleet moved as one. Fighters swarmed the giant vessel, striking at its turrets until they sparked and died. Cruisers poured concentrated fire into the same point again and again, their beams tearing through armor to expose the glowing core beneath. The flagship shuddered under the relentless storm, but it fought back with desperate rage. A blast of energy ripped through a human frigate, shattering it to dust. Another beam tore into a cruiser, leaving it crippled and burning. The humans paid with blood for every wound they gave, but they refused to stop. On the alien world, the counselors leaned forward, their hearts pounding. They had never seen such determination. The leader whispered, "This is no longer just a battle. This is humanity declaring to the stars that they will not yield." Then it happened. A squadron of human fighters broke through, led by a pilot whose ship was already burning. They dove straight at the flagship's exposed reactor vents, firing their last missiles. The explosions ripped open the vessel's side. Energy flared, and the flagship trembled. Kian saw the opening and raised his hand. "Now, all ships, fire everything." Missiles, beams, and torpedoes erupted from the human fleet in a storm of light. The flagship's shields collapsed, its armor splitting apart. The giant vessel shook violently, explosions tearing through its massive frame. For a moment, the battlefield went silent as everyone watched. Then the enemy flagship began to break. Fire spilled from its wounds, entire sections collapsing into themselves. With a final, deafening blast, the ship exploded in a blinding light that lit the stars. The shockwave tore through the void, rattling the remains of both fleets. The enemy forces, leaderless and broken, began to scatter. Some fled into the darkness, others powered down their weapons and surrendered. Humanity had done the impossible. The alien council chamber erupted with cries of disbelief and joy. The younger counselor fell back into his chair, whispering, They destroyed it. The monster is dead." The leader bowed his head, his voice trembling with awe. "No. The monster is dead because humanity refused to kneel." On the flagship, Admiral Kian stood in silence as the cheers of his crew filled the bridge. His officers wept, some collapsing in relief. The cost had been terrible, but they had won. Kian allowed himself a single, quiet breath before speaking. "Signal the fleet. Begin recovery operations. Rescue every survivor, human and alien alike. This victory must be built on life, not death." His words carried across the comms, reminding everyone that the fight was never for glory, but for survival, for unity, and for hope. On the alien world, the council leader spoke softly to his people. "Remember this day. Remember who came when no one else would. Humanity answered our call. And with them, hope returns to the galaxy." Above them, the stars burned bright, and among them drifted the scarred but unbroken fleet of humanity, their final battle won but their story far from over. The battlefield was silent now, the great enemy flagship gone, reduced to drifting shards of metal glowing faintly in the cold void. The human fleet floated among the wreckage, scarred and broken but alive. Fires burned on damaged hulls, and rescue beacons blinked across the dark like fading stars. Every ship bore the wounds of battle. Yet despite the loss and ruin, humanity stood victorious. On the alien world, the council chamber was filled with stunned silence. The younger counselor wiped his eyes as he stared at the screen. It is over. The monster is gone. But the leader shook his head slowly. It is not over. The enemy still lives, though broken. But today, the galaxy has seen something greater than fear. Today, we have seen hope. Across the fleet, Admiral Kian stood on the bridge of his battered flagship. His uniform was torn, his face marked by exhaustion, but his eyes still carried steel. Officers reported damage. Half the fleet destroyed, carriers crippled, thousands lost. Yet every report ended with the same words, "We still stand." Kian's voice was quiet but firm. "Begin rescue operations. Search every wreck. Recover survivors, human and alien alike. No one is to be left behind." Rescue shuttles launched, darting among the wreckage. They pulled pilots from ruined cockpits, dragged wounded crews from broken ships, and even recovered enemy soldiers who had abandoned their weapons. Humanity's compassion spread across the field as surely as their fire had done in battle. The alien council watched this with disbelief. The younger counselor spoke. "They even saved the enemy? After all that was done to them?" The leader nodded, his voice heavy with respect. "This is their strength. They fight fiercely, but they do not let hatred consume them. That is why they endure." On the flagship, Kian stood silently at the viewport, watching the stars. He thought of the countless faces who would never return home, of ships that had fought until their last breath. The weight pressed down on him, heavier than any wound. His second officer approached carefully. "Sir, we lost many today. But without you, none of us would have survived." Kian did not smile. His voice was somber. "It was not me. It was every captain who stood their ground, every pilot who flew into fire, every crew who refused to yield. This victory belongs to them." Reports soon came from scouts patrolling the edges of the battlefield. The enemy fleet had broken apart, their smaller ships fleeing into deep space. Some were hunted by humanity's fighters, but Kian gave a strict order. "Let them go. The message is already written in fire. They know now what humanity will do. That is enough." Back on the alien world, the council prepared to address their people. Crowds filled the great plazas, watching as the leader spoke with a voice that carried to every corner of the planet. "We called for help, and it was humanity who answered. When we had given up hope, they came. When the darkness closed in, they stood. And though they bled and sacrificed, they would not let us fall. Remember their courage, remember their fire. Today, the galaxy is no longer alone." The people wept, not with fear but with gratitude. For the first time in generations, they believed survival was possible. In orbit, humanity's fleet continued repairs. Engineers worked tirelessly, welding shattered hulls, patching broken systems, carrying the wounded to medical bays. Messages of mourning flowed through the ships, names of the fallen spoken with reverence. Yet at the same time, there was pride. Humanity had faced the impossible and triumphed. On Kian's bridge, a transmission arrived from Earth. The leaders of humanity spoke with voices full of pride. "Admiral, the galaxy has heard of your victory. The name of humanity now carries weight among the stars. You have done more than defend a world. You have shown all species that resistance is possible." Kian bowed his head. "We fought because it was right. We did not come for glory, but because no one should face extinction alone." His words were carried back across space, stirring the hearts of countless listeners. Rumors spread quickly. Other worlds, long oppressed or hiding in fear, heard the story of humanity's fleet. Whispers began, if the humans could defeat the unbreakable, perhaps the galaxy could fight back too. Perhaps unity was possible. Yet Kian knew the truth. This battle was only the beginning. The enemy still had fleets, still had weapons, still had hunger for conquest. Humanity had won a single victory, but the war was far from over. He looked out into the stars and spoke quietly, almost to himself. We showed them today that we will not kneel. Tomorrow, we must show them we will not stop. On the alien world, the council leader sent a private message to Kian. Admiral, your people have saved us. We cannot repay such a debt. But know this, we will no longer be silent. We will stand with you. Kian accepted the words with a nod. Then you honor those who gave their lives. Together, we will make sure their sacrifice means something greater than a single victory. The humans and aliens began to work side by side, repairing ships, treating the wounded, burying the dead. In the ashes of war, the first seeds of unity were planted. In the council chamber, the younger counselor whispered to the leader, "Do you think the humans can truly change the galaxy?" The leader watched the fleet above, battered but unbowed. They already have. They carry a fire that spreads to all who see it. That fire will not stop here. Across the stars, the message spread like lightning. Humanity had come, and they had stood against the darkness. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy began to dream of freedom. And though the war was not over, the tide had shifted. In the quiet after the storm, the survivors looked to the future, and in their hearts one truth burned bright. Humanity was not just another species among the stars. Humanity was the spark that could light the way. The stars shone quietly now, their cold light falling on the broken battlefield where humanity had made history. Wreckage still drifted, silent memorials of sacrifice, but the war was no longer just destruction. From that day forward, it became a story told and retold across worlds. Humanity had stood against the unstoppable, and in doing so, they had lit a fire in the hearts of many. On the alien world, the people celebrated with tears and song. They built monuments to the fallen, both alien and human, for the blood of both now stained the same soil. In the council chamber, the leader spoke with a voice filled with resolve. This is not the end. This is the beginning. We will not return to fear. We will fight, and we will stand beside those who came when no one else did. The younger counselor, once doubtful and afraid, now spoke with conviction. Then let us send word to the stars. Let every world know that humanity does not stand alone, and neither do we. On the flagship, Admiral Kian sat alone in his quarters, his face lined with exhaustion. He had delivered victory, but he felt the heavy cost in his bones. Every name of the fallen weighed upon him. Yet when he closed his eyes, he did not see despair. He saw faces, pilots, captains, crew members, who had stood until their last breath. He saw unity, courage, and fire. A knock came at his door. His second officer entered, holding a data pad. "Sir, messages are flooding in. Worlds we thought lost are sending signals. Colonies in hiding are reaching out. They want to speak with humanity." Kian looked up, surprise flickering across his tired face. "They want to join us?" The officer nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Your stand has changed them. You gave them hope. They want to fight." For a long moment, Kian said nothing. Then he stood, his voice quiet but firm. "Then the dawn has come. Not for humanity alone, but for the galaxy." The message spread quickly. Worlds long silent now spoke. Small fleets pledged allegiance. Hidden colonies revealed themselves. The galaxy had watched humanity fight, and now they began to believe they could fight too. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Families of the soldiers wept for their losses but held their heads high, proud that their sons and daughters had defended not only their world but countless others. Leaders gathered in great halls, declaring alliances that would have been unthinkable only months before. Humanity's name was carried across the stars, no longer just a species, but a symbol. Back on the alien world, the people built a great beacon beside the ruins of their first one. This time, it was not a call for help but a signal of unity. It pulsed into the void, carrying a single message: we are not alone. Humanity stands with us. The enemy, though wounded, was not gone. Scouts reported that their fleets were regrouping far away, gathering strength. Fear whispered again, but it no longer ruled. Kian spoke to his officers, his words calm and unshaken. They will come again. That is certain. But now, they will not find a single world standing alone. They will find us together. And together, we will not break. His fleet began repairs, aided by alien engineers. Ships once separated by fear now docked side by side, their crews sharing tools and stories. Pilots who once never spoke now trained together, learning from one another. Slowly, a new force began to form, not just humanity's fleet, but a united defense of many worlds. The Alien Council leader visited Kian personally. He bowed deeply, something never done before to an outsider. You did more than save us, Admiral. You gave us back our courage. You reminded us who we are. For that, we are in your debt. Kian shook his head. You owe us nothing. We fight because it is right. But if you stand with us, then the debt belongs to all of us. Together, we owe the future a promise. The leader nodded. Then we promise. Across the galaxy, whispers grew louder. Humanity had not come with vast numbers or unmatched technology. They had come with willpower, with sacrifice, with a refusal to yield. And that was enough to turn the tide. In quiet moments, Kian thought of the generations to come. He imagined children, human and alien, growing under skies free of fear. He imagined fleets not built for desperation but for exploration, ships carrying hope instead of war. He knew that dream was still far away, but for the first time, it felt possible. The younger counselor, once doubtful, stood before the assembly of his people and declared, "We are no longer afraid. When the darkness rises, we will not call for help. We will rise with humanity." The crowd roared, their voices echoing through the city. Above them, the repaired human fleet shone like guardians among the stars. The story spread further, carried on every signal, every ship, every survivor's voice. Humanity, once unknown beyond their own borders, had become the fire that spread light in the darkest night. And though war still waited, though the enemy still gathered, a new dawn had begun. Kian returned to the bridge of his ship, his eyes on the stars. His officers looked to him, waiting for orders. He spoke with calm certainty. Set course for Earth. Our people must know the truth. And then, we prepare. The war is not over, but today, we have shown the galaxy that we will not face it alone. The engines roared to life, carrying the battered but unbroken fleet home. Behind them, on the alien world, the new beacon pulsed steadily, its message clear and strong. In the hearts of billions, human and alien alike, hope took root. And in the endless night of space, that hope was brighter than any star. Humanity had answered the call, and in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever.